Okay, today we're going to talk about basic pressure washer maintenance, care, use, do's and don'ts when it comes to what we do. Basically with the pressure washer, because we're using hydrochloride, the hydrochloride is very corrosive, so we're constantly fighting rust. What I like to do is I usually will buy a gallon of WD-40, and this is pretty much something that should be done daily. Once the machine is done for the day, I try to keep it as neat and clean as possible. I like to spray the entire machine down, and I mean everything. Wipe it down with the WD-40. It helps ease the corrosion. As far as basic usage, the cat pump itself does contain oil that is separate from the crankcase. Manufacturer specifies that the cat pump can run 250 hours without an oil change. I don't like to let it go that far. We try to maintain about a 3 to 4 month schedule of having this oil changed, as well as the oil in the crankcase. Over here on the cat pump, there is a window where you can actually see the oil level. Before you start, you always want to visibly look and make sure that that oil level is right about halfway where the little red dot is. The crankcase has got 2 oil check spouts, one on each side, just in case one side's not accessible. This is an extended handle. Could be for someone who is excessively tall, likes a longer handle. This size right here is a standard issue. You can see that the other one is about 8 inches longer. This is the one that I like to use when it comes to just pressure washing houses. It's basically because it's handheld. I don't have to hold it with 2 hands. When you use these, you are using 2 hands to hold it. You want to carry basic tools with you whenever you're doing pressure washing. I like to carry an excessive amount of stuff, more than I really need. But this is all basic stuff, your screwdrivers, pliers. This little pick right here works really well when it comes to taking out the O-rings that are inside of these handles, both ends of it. Same thing with the pressure washing line. There are also O-rings in the ends of those. This is a O-ring replacement kit. It's always good to have a brand new one of these in the truck. In case an O-ring goes bad, you'll have the ability to replace it. We talked about pressure washing tips. We're going to do that again real quick. Basic tips would be a white tip, green tip, yellow tip. Now, normally there's a red tip that comes in the package, which is this one right here. This tip is basically useless. It will cause more damage than good. We don't even use this tip. Here's another blue tip that actually comes with the pink one. Not quite as useless, but very little use for that tip. These are your main tips right here. White tip would be something that gives you, it's a high pressure tip, but it's not as concentrated as, say, a green tip or a yellow tip. Green tip would mostly be used on concrete or even on a deck. The shooter tip, obviously, we use to shoot high into the air so we don't have to use ladders. And then the fan tip can either shoot chemicals or just straight water to rinse. We also have here what they call a turbo tip. This tip is very valuable to have if you're doing concrete. Do not use this tip on fresh concrete. What this tip actually is, opposed to the other ones which pretty much spray out straight, this one actually twists as it shoots. It works very well, but do not use it on wood or on fresh concrete because it will damage it. For the most part, these machines are literally bulletproof. One of the biggest problems that we see when it comes to the actual machine is basically the fuel. We have selected to use these filters in the fuel cap. A lot of times, as you can see here, we always carry an extra can of fuel. A lot of times, foreign objects and debris will get into the fuel can, and when you're on site and you're pouring it in, anything that is in there is going to very easily clog up the carburetor. Carburetor jets in the internal workings of a carburetor are extremely small. Anything is going to clog it up, which will cause the machine not to run. It will shut down. Same concept when we go to our aftermarket injector. Now, normally you can buy these hoses and these injectors. They do come with a filter. Unfortunately, for some reason, this filter tends to get clogged, and I'm really not sure why. You can't take the filter apart, so if it's clogged, you kind of would just try to blow air through here to see if it's clogged, opposed to thinking that the injector is not working. I normally will not use this because of the fact that they don't work very well. So because we're not using a filter, I like to use a mixing bucket for the hydrochloride, the water, and the soap. I also keep an extra bucket in the truck of pure, clear, clean water. This machine is also equipped with a sensor inside of the crankcase. If the oil level drops too low, the machine will start, but it will consistently shut back off. Always make sure that you check the oil level before you get started in both the cat pump and in the crankcase. Occasionally, with the old style red unit, it's the same exact unit, but this is a newer model. They tend to get what the mechanics call vapor lock. If you get vapor lock, sometimes the best thing to do is just loosen the gas cap, try to start the machine, and then tighten the gas cap back down. That could also be something that could be wrong if you're having problems. Another problem that we tend to have is the injector's not working. Most of these machines will come equipped with a stock injector, but you tend to have just as many problems with those as you will with these. This injector is the one that I've been using. After consulting with the guys that work on these machines, due to the problems we've had with the injectors not working, it's basically goes all the way back to the hydrochloride. As we can see, all the corrosion that builds up on these things from the chloride, what I started doing was, after I'm done drawing the solution from the chemicals, I take the line and drop it into the water, and you can see clearly the difference between how clean the inside of the injector is. I have had no problems with this injector since I started doing this. But the corrosion you see all over this is from the hydrochloride. Okay, there's a very small steel ball and a little spring that makes this work. There's also a small O-ring inside of the injector. Sometimes the steel ball can get stuck inside of this injector, which will not allow it to draw solution. You have to take it apart, free up the steel ball, and then put it back together with the steel ball first and the spring right behind it. Put it back together and then test it to make sure it's working. In order to keep your injector working good and keep the corrosion level to a minimum, once you're done drawing your solution, take the hose from the chemical bucket, drop it right into the clean water, and that way it will still keep drawing clean water, which will flush the injector and get the chloride out of it. As you just saw, there was a big difference between this injector and the one that was not cleaned out. So always make sure you do that. Put it into your clear water after you're done with your solution. Even if you're going back for more solution, always take it out of here, stick it in there, get that clear water going through it. When you're done, what I like to do is I like to disconnect the injector from the machine, and I hang it over the edge of the truck like this, just to let whatever's inside of it drain out, to avoid any rusting or anything like that. I always keep this thing in my box so that it's away from the weather too, to keep it in good shape. The pressure washing lines and your garden hose, these fittings are all have like a roller bearing type of surface inside, which these things can roll on. What I like to do is I carry axle grease. By the time you're done with your last job, you're always going to want to put some grease on these fittings, twist it around, kind of get it all over it. Keep it lubricated because it can rust, which will damage it. It'll get to the point where it will not work. This is an example of lines that are not taken care of. This one right here is rusted so badly, chances are it might not even fit together onto the cup link. And then the cup link end itself, same difference here. If those bearings are so dried out, they will freeze up. It will not work properly. As you can see, this line has been severely abused, as we were talking about before, not dragging the line up against a foundation or a fence or anything. This is what happens to it. It rips the coating off of the line. This line has actually, we need to throw this line out, it is actually popped. Okay, once a line pops, it's useless. If you let it go too far, then these lines are useless. These are very expensive. This is a shame. This line is no good anymore. Of a good line that has been taken care of, as you can see, the cup links are still in very good shape. They're well lubricated. The end is not rusted in any way. This is the way you want to keep your lines, especially keeping them wrapped. Do not let your line get all twisted up and just throw it into your truck. Same thing with your garden hose. Make sure you keep your hoses and your equipment wrapped lubricated, and in good condition. This will save you time on a job and will allow you to finish the job quicker, which is what we all want. Is this inlet right here is obviously where you hook the garden hose up. This piece right here is actually a filter. Again, like we talked about debris. Any debris going into the system, any one of these systems, whether it's the carburation system, the water inlet system, or even the injector system, is going to make it not work. Okay, so you want to make sure that your machine's going to work as good as it possibly can. So this right here, you can just unscrew this, and this is where the tools come in handy too. Always make sure you have a good variety of tools in your truck. As you can see, this one here has a little filter. This right here will come out. It's usually pretty snug, and obviously that's to help keep this debris from going into the water inlet. You're going to want to pull this off, and all this little debris stuff here, you want to definitely be able to rinse this out. This will separate, but the seals on these things are pretty good. Okay, that looks good, so we're going to put it back together. Now this little clear piece right here is actually glass. You don't want to tighten it down too much because you'll crack it. You crack it, you will not be able to continue. So just snug, and that's good. As you can see in the bed of this truck, there's a lot of rust that is going on. It is all from this hydrochloride. The stuff is very corrosive. Like I said, the machines, we are constantly fighting rust buildup on these machines. Make sure your hydrochloride jugs are sealed, they're not leaking. Whenever you finish doing a job, if you haven't used all the hydrochloride that is in your mixing bucket, you want to cover that bucket. Always rinse the inside of the truck out on a daily basis. Same thing as far as taking care of the machine. I like to wash it down, spray it with WD-40 to keep the thing lubricated, and I spray every inch of this machine, including the wheels, the axles, the motor itself, the framework, everything, just to make sure your machine is working properly, so when you do get on a job site, you don't end up having a malfunction. Same thing with the handles. I spray these down with WD-40. I lubricate all of the fittings to make sure that it's going to work properly for me when I'm out in the field.